The courtroom is a place of law, order, and justice, or at least, that's what it's supposed to be. But today, this wasn't just another legal proceeding. Today, a decision will be made that could shake the very foundation of justice. This is a story of a lawyer who wasn't just fighting for a client, she was fighting for freedom itself. Background fades. Sound of gavel striking. The court comes to order. Judge, firm voice, this court is now in session. The proceedings will begin. Footsteps echo as a confident attorney walks in. Briefcase clicking open, narrator. Pam Bondi, a renowned lawyer, sharp, fearless, and a master of the law. For her, this should have been just another day in court. But Judge Alan Prescott had just issued a ruling that could alter the course of legal history. Dramatic pause. Sound of papers being shuffled. Judge Prescott, sternly, Ms. Bondi, your cross necklace violates this courtroom's neutrality principles. You must remove it immediately. Muffled gasps in the courtroom. Chairs shifting. Pam Bondi, calm but firm, Your Honor. This isn't just a piece of jewelry. It is a symbol of personal freedom. And if you demand I remove it today, what's to stop someone from stripping another person's rights tomorrow? Background music intensifies, low drum beats. Tension rising. Judge slams his gavel. Judge Prescott, Ms. Bondi, this is a courtroom, not a place for personal debates. Either remove it or I will fine you for contempt. Pause. The audience holds its breath. Narrator. For a moment, time stood still. Could a judge's authority outweigh the law itself? Did personal freedom cease to exist within the walls of courtroom? Pam had a choice to make. Would she yield or would she fight? Sound of chair creaking as Pam stands. Pam Bondi, steadily, if you plan to fine me, Your Honor, first tell me, under what law am I guilty? Sound of papers being picked up. Tension in the air. Pam Bondi, the First Amendment of the United States Constitution guarantees that no person's religious or personal expression can be restricted. Your order is not the law. It is merely an opinion. Judge shifts uncomfortably. People murmur. Judge Prescott, frustrated. But controlled, Ms. Bondi. This is my courtroom. What I say here is the law. Sound of papers hitting the table. Pam Bondi, intense. Unwavering, no. Your Honor, this courtroom belongs to you, but the law belongs to the people, and I stand with the law. Narrator steps in, the tension in the air thick. Narrator, a judge's authority, a lawyer's defiance, and a decision that could change everything. Would justice prevail, or would power silence the truth? Dramatic music swells. The battle for justice begins. The courtroom is silent. The tension is thick enough to cut with a knife. The judge stares down at Pam Bondi, his fingers tightening around the gavel. The air crackles with an unspoken challenge. Judge Prescott, cold, measured, Ms. Bondi, I suggest you reconsider your stance before I take more severe action against you. The audience holds its breath. A single cough echoes from the back of the courtroom. The stenographer's fingers hover over the keys. Waiting. Pam Bondi, calm, unwavering, Your Honor. With all due respect, you may command this courtroom, but you cannot rewrite the Constitution. I refuse to comply with an order that violates fundamental freedoms. Murmurs ripple through the room. A journalist scribbles furiously in her notepad. The opposing counsel shifts in his chair, his lips pressing into a thin line. Judge Prescott, his patience wearing thin, this is my final warning. Miss Bondi, either remove that symbol or face the consequences. Pam Bondi takes a slow breath. She places both hands on the defense table, leans forward slightly, and looks the judge straight in the eye. Pam Bondi, then let the consequences come. Gasps, a low murmur of disbelief. Even the bailiff's eyes widen slightly. Judge Prescott's face darkens. Narrator, deep, slow tone, and with those 6 words. The battle lines were drawn. This was no longer just about a courtroom rule. This was about power versus principle, law versus authority, freedom versus control. Judge Prescott slams the gavel down, bang. The room flinches. Judge Prescott, bailiff, take Miss Bondi into custody for contempt of court. Chaos erupts. Reporters scramble for their phones. The sound of camera shutters clicking fills the room like gunfire. The bailiff hesitates. Just for a second, Pam Bondi raises her chin, refusing to flinch as the officer approaches. The courtroom doors burst open. A new voice rings out. Voice from the entrance, commanding, "Stop this at once." Head snapped toward the back. A tall figure strides into the room, dressed in a sharp black suit. A man of authority. A man of law. The air shifts suddenly. Judge Prescott is no longer the most powerful person in the room. Narrator. And then the real battle began. Dramatic pause. The screen fades to black. Music swells. The next chapter awaits. The tension in the room is unbearable. The man in the black suit stops at the center of the courtroom, his presence commanding immediate attention. Judge Prescott grips the edges of his bench, his knuckles turning white. Judge Prescott gritted teeth. "And who do you think you are to barge into my courtroom unannounced?" The man slowly removes his sunglasses, revealing piercing blue eyes that seem to cut through the very fabric of the room. Man in black suit, calm. Authoritative. "My name is Alexander Graves, federal prosecutor, and as of this moment, your authority here is suspended." Gasps. The room tilts. Even the bailiff looks stunned. Pam Bondi narrows her eyes, studying Graves. The judge slams his gavel. But this time, the sound is weaker, less certain. Judge Prescott, voice shaking slightly. "You have no right." Alexander Graves, cut him off. "I have every right. Your Honor, as of 9 a.m. this morning, a federal injunction was filed against your ruling in this case. You are in direct violation of constitutional law. You have exactly two options: step down voluntarily or be removed by force." A deathly silence falls. The cameras flash. The court stenographer's hands tremble as she types furiously. Pam Bondi, still handcuffed, tilts her head slightly, intrigued. Narrator, slow, deliberate. And just like that, the hunter became the hunted. Judge Prescott looks around, desperate for support. His own clerks refuse to meet his gaze. The bailiff shifts uncomfortably. Sweat beads on the judge's forehead. Judge Prescott, growling, "This is absurd." "I," before he can finish. The courtroom doors swing open again. This time, for uniformed federal marshals step inside, their badges gleaming under the fluorescent lights. The lead officer speaks in a deep, clipped voice. "Marshal, Judge Prescott, you are hereby relieved of your duties pending a formal investigation into judicial misconduct. Please step down." The room is stunned. Pam Bondi lets out a slow breath. Her defiance remains. But for the first time, a flicker of something else crosses her face. Satisfaction. Judge Prescott stands frozen, his lips parting slightly, his power slipping through his fingers like sand. Alexander Graves steps forward, his voice a dagger in the silence. "Alexander Graves, the law is not yours to twist." "Prescott, and now you'll answer for it." Judge Prescott's hands tremble as he reaches for his gavel one last time. But it's too late. The marshals move in. The moment the cold steel of the handcuffs clicks around his wrists, the mighty judge becomes just another man. Pam Bondi exhales, rolling her shoulders. The weight of the moment settles. The battle isn't over, but the tides have turned. Narrator, low, powerful, and in the fight for justice, no one is untouchable. The screen fades to black. A single heartbeat echoes in the void. Then boom, the sound of a gavel. The next chapter looms. Fade in, a darkened interrogation room. A single light bulb swings slightly, casting eerie shadows on the gray concrete walls. The air is thick with tension. Across the table, Alexander Graves sits, his fingers steepled, his piercing gaze locked onto the man in front of him, Judge Prescott. now stripped of his robe, clad in an orange jumpsuit, his hands, once accustomed to wielding the gavel of justice, now twitch in iron cuffs. Alexander Graves, low, deliberate. You thought you were untouchable, that the system would always protect you. Prescott scoffs, but there's no real confidence behind it. His once commanding presence is diminished, his face drawn with sleepless nights. Judge Prescott, hoarse whisper, I know how this works. Graves, you think you can break me? You think I'll just roll over and give you what you want? Alexander Graves, leaning in, a ghost of a smirk playing on his lips. I don't think. Prescott, I know. A beat. Prescott swallows hard. Graves slides a manila folder across the table. The sound of paper rustling fills the silence. The judge's eyes dart downward. Photos. Documents. Proof. His face drains a color. Judge Prescott, barely audible, this is impossible. Alexander Graves. Oh. It's very possible. Offshore accounts. Wire transfers. Undisclosed meetings. Every dirty little secret you thought was buried, it's all right here. And this, he taps the thickest file. This is enough to put you away for the rest of your miserable life. Prescott's jaw tightens. Sweat beads on his forehead. But Graves isn't done. He leans in closer. His voice barely above a whisper. Dangerous. Razor sharp. Alexander Graves. Unless you start talking. Prescott lets out a ragged breath. His eyes darting around the room. Looking for an escape that doesn't exist. His lips part. But no words come out. Graves leans back. Satisfied. He's seen this before. The precise moment a man realizes his empire has crumbled. Suddenly, the door creaks open. A woman steps inside. Agent Valerie knocks. Sharp. Efficient. Unreadable. She carries a tablet in one hand, her other gripping a cup of coffee that she doesn't seem interested in drinking. Agent Valerie knocks. Cooey, we have a problem. Graves frowns. Knox places a tablet on the table and swipes the screen. A video feed flickers to life. A grainy security camera recording Pam Bondi, still in custody. But she's not alone. A man in a gray suit is speaking to her, his back to the camera. Graves, eyes narrowing. Who the hell is that? Knox doesn't look up. Knox, we don't know, but Bondi does. And whatever he's saying, it's changing the game. The feed cuts out. The room is silent. Then, Prescott exhales and smirks. Judge Prescott, low, mocking, you think I'm the end of this. Graves? Oh, you have no idea what you've just stepped into. Fade to black. A single sentence appears on screen. The truth is only the beginning. Fade in. A dimly lit surveillance room. Multiple monitors flicker, displaying live feeds from various locations, government buildings, private estates, underground parking garages. The hum of electronic equipment fills the space. Agent Valerie Knox stands with arms crossed, her jaw set tight. Alexander Graves watches the frozen image on the screen. Pam Bondi, mid-conversation with a mysterious man in the gray suit. Alexander Graves, quiet. Tense run facial recognition. I want to know who he is. Agent Knox, already swiping on her tablet. Already on it. But there's something else. She taps the screen. Another feed appears, this one grainy and distorted, like it's been pulled from a corrupted file. It shows a darkened alley. A figure stands alone, a cigarette glowing in the shadows. Then, headlights flood the screen. The figure turns slightly, and the video cuts to static. Graves, brow furrowing, what am I looking at? Knox, grimly, that was 3 hours ago, and that was our informant. A silence hangs between them. Graves runs a hand over his face. Frustration creeping in. Graves, let me guess. No body. No witnesses. Knox, shaking her head clean. Professional. Whoever's pulling the strings, they're always one step ahead. Graves exhales sharply. He turns back to the frozen image of the man in the gray suit. Graves, not for long. Cutio, a sterile. High security detention center. The fluorescent lights buzz overhead as a steel door unlocks with a loud clank. Inside, Pam Bondi sits at a metal table, her wrists shackled, her expression unreadable. Graves steps in, flanked by Knox. He takes a seat across from her, folding his hands together. Graves measured. Calm, Pam. You and I both know you're out of time. Pam leans back, a slow smile creeping onto her lips. It's not the smile of a woman who's scared. It's the smile of a woman who knows something Graves doesn't. Pam Bondi, softly, almost amused. Oh, Alex, you have no idea who you're really up against. Do you? She leans forward now, lowering her voice. Pam Bondi, walk away, before you end up like the others. A tense silence. Graves doesn't flinch. Graves, that's not how this works. Pam exhales, tilting her head slightly, studying him like a predator studies prey. Pam Bondi, you think you're hunting them, but they've been watching you this entire time. She taps the table twice, almost on cue. The room's lights flicker. A sharp, high-pitched beep sounds from Knox's earpiece. She presses a hand to it, listening, then suddenly stiffens. Knox, urgent, eyes widening. Graves. Security just triggered an external breach. Someone's inside the building. Graves stands instantly. The overhead lights cut out, plunging the room into darkness. A red emergency light flashes on. Pam leans back in her chair, unfazed, her smirk widening. Pam Bondi whispering too late. The sound of gunfire echoes through the halls. Fade, Ian. The emergency alarm blares. A piercing wail echoing through the high-security detention center. Red warning lights strobe across the steel walls. Graves and Knox exchange a sharp glance. There's no time to hesitate. Knox, hand on her gun. Voice tense, we need to move. Now. Graves, gritted teeth, not without answers. He whirls back to Pam. But she just sits there, calm as ever, fingers tapping lightly against the cold metal table. A predator enjoying the chaos she saw coming. Pam Bondi mocking, you still don't get it, do you? The second you stepped into this room, the game was over. Suddenly, boom! The door behind them explodes inward, the force sending metal shrapnel through the air. Graves and Knox duck instinctively, shielding their faces. A thick cloud of smoke billows in, and through it, the silhouette of a figure emerges. A tall, imposing shape, clad in tactical gear. A suppressed rifle held steady, before Graves can react. The gunman moves like a phantom, swift and precise. He grips Pam's arm, yanking her to her feet. She doesn't resist. She anticipated this rescue. Her expression is almost amused as she turns to Graves one last time. Pam Bondi, low, deadly whisper, I warned you. Alex. And then, crack. The butt of a rifle slams into Graves' head. His vision blurs. The world spinning as he collapses to the floor. His ears ring, muffling Knox's distant voice, shouting his name. The last thing he sees is Pam vanishing into the smoke, her rescuer dragging her into the shadows. Cut to black. Fade in unknown location. A dimly lit warehouse. Concrete walls. The scent of oil and dust thick in the air. Graves blinks awake, his head pounding. He's tied to a chair, wrists bound with zip ties. Knox sits across from him, similarly restrained. Blood drips from a cut on her forehead. They've been taken, but by who? Footsteps echo in the vast space. A figure approaches from the shadows. Slow, deliberate, when the light catches his face. Graves' stomach turns to ice. Graves, hoarse. In disbelief, no, it can't be you. The man standing before him isn't just another enemy. He's someone Graves buried years ago. Someone who was supposed to be dead. The man smirks, crouching down to meet Graves' eyes. Mysterious man. Miss me? Fade in. Abandoned warehouse, night. The air is thick with tension. Graves stares at the man in front of him. The man he thought was dead. Knocks. Still bound. Watches with wary eyes. Blood drying on her temple. Graves, hoarse. Barely believing it, you're supposed to be dead. The man chuckles, stepping closer. His shadow stretching over Graves like a specter from the past. Mysterious man. Yeah. Well, you should know by now. Graves. Nothing stays buried forever. He pulls out a knife. Flipping it in his hand, Graves tenses, readying himself for the worst. Then, crack! A single gunshot shatters the air. The mysterious man staggers back, a dark red bloom spreading across his chest. His knife clatters to the ground. Behind him, standing in the shadows, is Pam Bondi. Her expression is unreadable, her gun still aimed at the man's chest. Pam Bondi, coldly sorry. Sweetheart, you were never part of the plan. The man chokes, eyes flickering with shock before he collapses. Pam doesn't even flinch. She steps over his body and kneels in front of Graves, her face close to his. Pam Bondi, softly, almost amused. I told you, Alex, you were playing the wrong game. Before Graves can react, a deafening explosion shakes the warehouse. Pam's backup has arrived. A black SUV skids to a stop outside. Armed men spill in, weapons raised. Pam rises, turning away. Graves, desperate, shouting after her, Pam, you don't have to do this. She pauses just for a second, glancing back, something unreadable in her eyes. Then she smiles, a knowing, almost tragic smile. Pam Bondi whispering, I already did. With that, she disappears into the night. The SUV speeds off, tires screeching. Graves and Knox barely have time to process what just happened before sirens wail in the distance. The authorities are coming, but the mastermind has vanished.